I love finance. I love real estate. I love numbers. But at the same time, like, I don't want to be captive to an office.
Oh my gosh. So where do you think this fear stemmed from? Fear of an office? I don't think I've heard that before. Until someone's like sat in it for how many years?
20 too many.
I don't know. I literally just was like, the idea of waking up and like having to do the same thing again and again was just always like this is life. Like, this can't be it. Yeah. So I just, even going through college and stuff, it was always a big mystery for me, because I was like, how can I figure out how to not have to do that?
Yeah.
It was never like, I'm not a super money motivated person, but like freedom to travel and freedom of time is so important to me. Like,
which dials back to money. And I think that's really important that you're saying that, because some people aren't driven by the dollar, but yet the things they enjoy doing or giving back to require
a lot of them dollars.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if it's not a material pursuit, it's the same thing. Like,
right.
Well, they say the definition of wealth is having more and better options.
Yeah.
So
get this, actually. So you're familiar with the World Bank.
Yep.
So practically it's the US bank. Like, let's be real, but they actually used to define wealth. Like, they would measure wealth of all the countries, and they would look at like gross median income. Like, they would just look at income levels and their goals. They set all their goals based on increase in income. And what they would do is, in some of these countries, they'd actually increase the income, but they're like, why are these countries worse off? And so they redefined their definition of wealth. And now it's like a holistic, like, okay, what is their health? What are their opportunities for education? How good is their living conditions? So it's like, not even a, like, people kind of think it's this up in the air, like wealth is. No, like, literally the World Bank says that's what wealth is. So it's pretty cool.
Well, that's what they talk about, is it's not just the money. I mean, wealth is monetary, but there's so many more factors to it. I believe lifestyle is huge. And to me, and that's why everybody has, like, nobody could be more successful than somebody else, because success is based on, what you want it to be. So for 100%. Us to have moved from cold upstate New York to Florida, to owning our own multiple businesses, to homeschooling our kids, to us, that was a huge level of success. That's what we wanted for so long. And we thought, like, it was never going to happen, or if it did, we were going to be like 70 before we could move to Florida. Yeah. Right. And now here it is.
Speaking of moving to Florida, though, I want to like dial back to so what brought you down to sunny, beautiful? I mean, I know why you might have moved, but in your own words, and share with us.
Yeah, it's funny when I get asked that all the time, because I'm like, I grew up in Michigan, and people are like, I get it. I'm like, no, I like Michigan a lot better. Let me tell you, I love winter. But it's honestly a painful story. So in college, I had a mentor. This guy was like, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was in college. Second semester, freshman year, I had this econ professor who's super charismatic. Later found out he's just very narcissistic. But, he teaches micro econ, and my mind is blown. Like, I've never heard of any of these concepts. I grew up in Little Marquette, like, didn't even know there was really like a thing as being a business owner. Like, I just thought CEO was like a job. And so I got took every class I could with him. He got me into finance, went to conferences that he was going to, like, whatever I could do. And after I spent a summer in Idaho after I graduated to just explore, and I was planning on moving out there. He offered me, he was like, yo, I'm raising money. I just bought a mansion in historic downtown Grand Rapids for like $2.3 million. Wow. You can come here, live in it for free. It was a conversion to a 14 unit. He bought it on seller finance, actually. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of it. I was like, this bro's buying mansions? What? This is cool.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to go to a bank to do it.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I was just like, whoa, like, this is crazy. I'm going to be a millionaire. Like, he was like, oh, I'll get you equity in our company. Like, you can help raise money. I had a background in modeling and underwriting from an internship with a developer. So I was just like fired up for that. And honestly, the experience was horrible. He burnt me on a few business ventures. I was making like no money. I actually ended up living with him for a little while. And before I finally, there was another partner involved that never knew that I was kind of promised this equity, and he never wanted me there to begin with. I didn't even know he was part of the picture, really. So yeah, I kind of got booted out and honestly had nowhere to go. And I called up Gabe. I was like, yo, dude, what are you guys doing in Tampa? Because I have nowhere to go. And so that's why I came down. Gabe and Nick welcomed me with open arms. And yeah, it was pretty incredible. They taught me a lot about wholesale and, of course, creative finance.
So Gabe and Nick are some friends of ours that we actually met Nick years ago from a deal. He lived in Tampa, and the seller had a house in Syracuse, New York, close to where Jen and I were living, and wanted to sell it. So he just put a post out in a group. He and I connected. We kind of hit it off. And then when we came down to Tampa, Jen's like, let's get everybody all together. And that's how we even got to know those guys and found out, yeah, you're in some great hands, because those some wonderful dudes.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's cool. We've still been able, like, since I made the transition to lending, like, I put them in touch with someone from our meetup. Ended up being a 44K assignment that they got to dispo. I told Nick, I was like, we can finally say this thing made money. And today, actually, I'll be funding a deal that I bought a borrower in as their highest buyer on. And that's the way we're financing that is actually pretty creative too.
Yeah, so you're using some big terms. So I want to break it down for our listeners, which is great. But when we're in the business, it's easy to throw those terms around. Let's kind of dial it back a little bit. So obviously wholesaling, if you want to just quickly break that down and we can transition into the lending.
Yeah.
Stealing houses from grandma.
Right.
No. Wholesaling has such a bad rap.
Well, and I think that was what happened too, because there's so many things that you could read online. You could read that doctors are bad. You could read that, all the things, right? But integrity for the long run is what's key to success. So when you surround yourself with people who are doing the right thing and have a high point of integrity and actually want to help, there's many deals I'm sure you guys talked to that you couldn't make the deal, right? But maybe you try to help that seller. And then there's many deals that you do make. So that's what's wonderful. You hear people say, oh, you're whatever. Wholesaling, I think, to me, brings a really big thing into the real estate industry, because what you're doing when you're wholesaling a deal is you're finding somebody who typically doesn't want to list their house on the market. And there's many reasons. Sometimes it needs a lot of work. Sometimes they just want speed and convenience. Sometimes what I've noticed, one of the biggest things, they're almost kind of ashamed of its current condition, and they don't want to see their friends, their family, their community and neighbors. They don't want them to see what the inside of their house looked like. So, for doing a deal off market, there's a huge amount of people who much rather do. Jen and I, and I'm sure you, talk to a ton of sellers. And one of the questions we always ask is like, why haven't you thought about listing it on the market? There's a big, long list of reasons why. It's probably taller than me, and I'm 6'2". Of different reasons why people don't want to list their house on the market. So what a wholesaler does, for some of you know, some might not know, is if this is somebody who wants to sell their house, they don't want to put it on the market. It usually needs a lot of work. They're going to give you a really big discount. When you get it under contract, you have a few options. I could do a fix and flip if I want, and we do a bunch of those. And then sometimes, like some of these situations we're in, where maybe it took them a little bit of a while to say yes to the deal, but since then we might have already bought another deal. And so it becomes times where maybe I just find a cash buyer who I'm not going to sell them the house. I'm selling them the agreement that I have. And the agreement that I have is to be able to buy that house at this cash price. And if my cash buyer could buy that at that price, do some renovations and either turn it into a rental or to fix and flip, there's many different options they could do. It creates a great service. So that's what you guys were, that's what your specialty is.
And if like a good wholesaler, to put this into layman's terms, is part therapist, part detective, because typically there's always going to be problems with title. Like there's things, legal matters, family matters, long lost cousins. Like you are a detective and you're a therapist, and like half the time it's just bringing the family together. So ultimately it's solving a problem that's related to headache real estate. I would say was at least 50% of our deals.
Yeah. And so many times you're helping out a marriage issue or an inherited property, or so many different things that could come up. That it's just one thing after another. So the part about real estate, even any part of it, is being able to solve problems, be quick on your toes. What are you laughing at?
I'm so sorry. Anyone listening, at 2:00, it's like the landscapers with snow to come by.
They know this is the spot.
Literally, you can probably hear it. Listen, so I apologize for the audio. We're working on our sound booth here.
But I'll tell you, even the landscapers know this is the place to be. Tuesday at 2:00.
They want to get close enough to tune in.
Yeah, and they might be. Hopefully they get a deal. If they see enough properties where, I'll tell you, speaking of somebody, talk to your landscapers and say, hey, do you ever run into any properties that could be empty or vacant or look like it needs a lot of work? Give me that address. And if I buy it, I'll pay you a referral. So Love your landscapers.
Or anyone else that is traveling to properties. We've had clients who talk to their plumbers and handymen.
Yep, I've got she's a mail woman, but mailman, right? Mail woman. That they work wonderful too because they're delivering mail. So one of the young ladies I went to high school with, that's what she does for a living. She's a mail carrier. And she's like, hey, I have a house that's empty. And so, like, once again, if we buy those deals, I will gladly pay some moolah for that.
But what if you don't have the money? So that's what I want to transition to here is how do people work with you? And what is your services as a hard money lender? Like, what does that mean?
Well, and I want to kind of help with that too, because we always hear in real estate, use other people's money.
Yeah. OPM, right? That's right? So trendy.
So if you don't have money, then you got to see guys like him, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And if you have $0 in your bank account, please don't call me because then you don't have a down payment.
Oh, see, that's something important. People might not know that.
Yeah, exactly right. So the way that it typically works, right? Like maybe 30 years ago, you might just have like, oh, I've got 30K in my bank account. Let me just buy a house and flip it. But now if properties are going to be $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, and if you're trying to make a business out of flipping, I don't know who you are if you've got $1 million that you can keep rolling around to do stuff cash. So the natural thing that you want to do is leverage. Well, you're very aware, as am I, that your traditional bank financing is just like the process is horrendous, right? We're talking tax records, we're talking blood type. How many? No, I'm just kidding.
No, it basically feels like that because when he worked full time and we were burring back in the day, there's a couple times where I was like, are you kidding me? I thought I was done. And it was like 3 or 4 more weeks of just constant paperwork, improving this, improving that.
Yeah.
You got to run the mile under 6 minutes. You got to be able to jump. So, I mean, it was like all these things. And
really ridiculous.
And then the people at the bank were like, well, and we made it a little harder because we always take deed in a land trust. And so they're like, well, your LLC is borrowing the money, but technically that LLC doesn't even know. It was, so we made it even a little bit harder on the lender. But they went in over 100-year history. The bank made the exceptions for us and did those deals.
Wow. So shout out Canandaigua National.
Boom, Canandaigua National.
So we're kind of like, what I tell people is I'm like, they call me up, they're like, hey, how do I finance a property? I'm like, well, first off, talk to Jen and Joe, because if you can do terms, do terms. Like, not like you can get bad terms, right? Yeah, obviously. Yeah. But if you can get good terms, like there's not a better way to buy a property. It's going to be the biggest win for the seller. It's going to be the biggest win for you. And it's probably going to be the fastest by far.
Yep.
And unless you're getting complicated with sub 2 paperwork, like probably the least amount of paperwork. But after that, I'm like, you kind of have 2 options after that, assuming that you don't just have all this cash that you're trying to deploy. You can talk to private money lenders. Right. So these are just individuals are probably lending out of an LLC. Maybe they have a small family funds. But these people frequently get tapped out. And honestly, a lot of times they're a little bit outrageous with their terms, 4 points, 14% interest, but you avoid a lot of the paperwork, a lot of the standard process.
What does 4 points mean?
So a point is a percentage of the loan amount. So if I was to lend you $100,000 and charge you 4 points, then you would owe me $4,000 for me to give you the $100,000. So you're going to get charged on your $100,000, but really it's like, hey, you're already missing 4 of that.
Okay.
So
and that's with private money, or does that work with hard money too?
I mean, there's hard money lenders that'll charge that. I'm typically at 2%, which is pretty industry standard. But there's like, I call them the Walmart lenders that are like the big corporate, like you are just a number to them, but they will probably give you the cheapest terms. And there's like a 50% chance that they actually fund your deal. Like if you want to do that, that's great. But
and is that like at the last second you find out if you're getting that money or not? Or
yeah. Like I won't name names, but there's
no, you can name them. No, we could totally do that. Okay. No,
I was like, I don't mind dragging them through the mud. I just gotta
like, go get it.
Drama, data, not drama.
There's one company that like we'll get shopped to all the time, and I'm like, please go with them, please. Like, do it now, so that way I don't have to fund like your next 3 deals and hear about like how they're lower, because I want you to experience what customer service is like there. And their average time to close is like 20 days. Okay. It's 5 days, right? But it's actually 20.
Mm-hmm. All the fine print.
Exactly.
All the loops, the hoops, the fees, all the stuff that, I mean, and the thing is this too, as far as what we do is speed and convenience, right? So if you're able to pay a slight bit more, but it's quicker, it's easier. And if it's just a cost of doing business, and if your deal is that tight where you can't do the deal because of it, then you shouldn't be doing that deal in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you say that again? Just like
bam. Watch the replay, but
right. You know, the other thing too is like, how many times do you see lenders that'll be like, oh, you know, on the phone, the first call, they'll tell you everything that you want to hear. They're like, oh, you know, we just have this one fee, blah, 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 blah. You get to the HUD and you're like, I don't like you fee. I had a bad day fee.
It's like
extra
a hotel
fee,
checkout. All of a sudden,
processing fee.
fees.
Yeah, it's just like I'll be like, I tell people that I work with, if I don't tell you about a fee that you're gonna get, like I will pay for it out of pocket, because everything that I have that I quote you, like that's everything. We have 2 fees: processing fee and points. That's it. Like you'll have
the tax on the processing fee. I mean,
yeah, right.
All the other things they're going to itemize that you don't even realize till later on. It all adds in.
Yeah. But to circle back to the original question, like who are the people that are coming to me?
Right.
So typically I see one of 2 people. There's someone who's brand new and they want to get into fix and flipping. These are people that really want like that active source of income. They're not trying to build wealth necessarily. They're like, I want to make an extra 50 grand a year. I want to flip 2 houses. And they're at the point where they don't really have the experience to go to like good private money lenders can hook you up with awesome terms, but they only work with the best. If you're not doing serious volume and have a great reputation, like they're not lending to you. So I get a lot of new people, right? And I tell them like, hey, this is the process. It's really simple. I need to make sure your credit isn't terrible, right? Above 600 I can work with. You need to make sure that on your background, you're not a convict, right? Nobody's trying to collect from you. But beyond that, it's just, hey, make sure you have your 10 to 15% of the total cost of the project available, which is purchase price plus reno. So if you're buying for 100,000 and the reno's 50,000, we'll finance that, but you need 15% of that 150,000. And
in liquid in their own account.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the whole Gator stuff and how that works as well, because that's super trendy right now. But yeah, then a couple months of interest payment reserves, right? Making sure you've got enough for your insurance, title costs, closing costs. Like if I lend money to someone and they run out of liquidity during the flip, like I don't want to deal with that.
Right.
Been in that spot myself.
Wait, does that actually happen? I have all these people on Instagram saying that they never go over budget.
Yeah, right.
They never do, ever, right? So is that a lie, or do people actually really go over their renovation budget?
You know, here's an idea. I'm starting to think not everything on Instagram is real. It's a theory I've been tossing around lately.
I don't know if I buy it, buddy. Everything on Instagram looks real good to me. Well, but in all honesty.
And all truth on the reno budget too. One of the things that makes like our company a really easy sale is, are you familiar with Dutch versus non-Dutch?
No. I think I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
Yes.
There was an old designer, Von Dutch, way back in the early 2000s, like the cool hats, but
might be related. So, okay, if you're Dutch, this is how it would work. It's kind of like going Dutch versus non-Dutch on a date, I think, if I'm thinking of it right. Non-Dutch is where you split it or you don't split it.
I feel like Dutch is when you split it.
Yeah.
So like when he took me out, he would not let me pay. So
gotcha. Well, before I confuse myself, I'll just explain it. So if Jen, if you come to me and you're like, hey, I've got this great deal. I'm going to buy it for $150,000. Cosmetic reno going to run me about 50. So your total cost is 200. Maybe you can sell it on market for like 325. I'm going to say, great. And if I'm a Dutch lender, then you're going to get charged on that whole amount from day one. The money that you borrowed for the reno, even though you haven't even used it and it's not in your account yet, and the purchase price. So if you're in that kind of situation, like Joe, to your point about people running out of funds, like once the note is written up, it's written up. It's not like if you go over budget, we'll be like, okay, here's another 20 grand, right? Like it's already originated. It's already with title, like everything's done.
Yep.
So if you're in a position where you're getting charged interest on all of your reno fund, like you're going to be kind of wary about how high you want that to go. Now, the flip side is if, same deal, you come to me and you're like, buying it for 150,000. I think the reno is going to be 50, but like I'd prefer to have some extra wiggle room, because what if, you know, there's termite damage and whatever else. Be like, great, let's run it up as an $80,000 budget. You don't have to use all of it. You're not going to get charged interest on it. Your total loan amount is going to be a little bit higher, so you'll bring a little bit more to closing, and your points, right? That's the percentage of the loan amount you're charged as a fee, will be a little bit higher. But by far the biggest risk in flipping is not losing money when you sell it. It's running out of money before it's done.
Absolutely.
That's when you're just like,
you're in a trouble. We run into those people all the time.
Yep. You have almost no options.
Like, they're asking us to try to save them, and those are like the heartbreaking ones, because there's literally nothing we can do.
It's bridge.
You know what? We have one of those that we just did. We were talking with the seller, and believe it or not, Gabe walked through the house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and this lady bought this house in Tampa from a wholesaler. She gets into it. She starts doing it. She realizes this is way more work than they had budgeted, and she's already way over. I mean, they're in a jam. I don't know what they're going to do to save that deal.
So here's a strategy for you. And I know people that do this, and I can attest, being on the lender side of it, that if they're with like, you know, if they're with a Walmart company, they're screwed. If they're with like an actual, you know, we care about you type of company, the lenders don't want to foreclose on it. And so if you're able to get in touch, if it is a hard money lending company, I don't know about private money. It might be hard to track down a lender, et cetera, but you can get in touch with the lender and talk about like, hey, you know, rather than you guys foreclosing, like maybe I can just assume the loan, take the spot on it. And the lender might be like, okay, I'm going to forgive all the past due stuff. We'll reduce the note. Like it's from the lending perspective, it's going to save them tons of legal costs. It's going to be way easier to just see this be done. And typically most hard money lenders like have back-end financing partners. There's a note market and all of these things. So the note might be sold off. Like it's so much easier to just see that thing through to completion.
Then let it blow up.
So if you know of people like that, like it is a strategy to be like, let me talk to your lender. I'll see if I can come in, save the day, or like, you know, connect the dots to a fix and flipper who can do that.
So that's what you are. You're literally putting on your superhero cape. Like you said earlier, you're solving the problems. You're trying to see like, can I fix these, you know, issues that keep arising? And
100%.
We'll definitely have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a need too, because so many people see that it's so fun to do a fix and flip on TV, and you're like, well, I want to do that too.
Well, Joanna Gaines. And
how many people do you think HGTV has ran into bankruptcy?
Oh my gosh.
And it's so funny because people ask, like, don't you watch those shows? I'm like, I don't, because like we do it for a living. So
we have friends who are on those shows.
Yeah.
They actually do it, and you find out, like, guess what? They have real issues too. And the issue is when you have it on TV, the TV channels and the networks, they don't care if you lose deals. And we actually have some friends who are on these shows. And when you found out that from being on one of these TV shows to get it to the level they were, they lost $700,000 last year.
Oh my gosh.
But
sometimes they have to redo it because they came before the camera crew came. And, you know, we could have a whole episode on
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's insanity what's TV
No
does.
kidding.
So, yeah, but in order to be able to lose $700,000, and it comes out of their pocket. It's their it's their money. It's their deals. The TV channel says, hey, we wanted to make it look this great for TV. And these guys are going out and girls are going out spending way more than they would have in that neighborhood typically, because it's got to look great for TV. And then Jen said, you know, sometimes they have to redo the same tile work all over because they didn't get that video shot that they wanted. They didn't get it filmed. So like, okay, rip that all out and put it back up there again. They're like, dude, that's another $3,000. And they're like, yeah, well, we want it to look good. And then here's the best part. They might not even use that part for the TV show too, right? That might get scrapped, the whole thing altogether.
Crossing that one off the bucket list. I don't want to be on that show.
Nope.
I mean, it comes with its own perks, but
yeah, I'm sure there's other things that it opens up other doors too, but those are expensive doors to open up.
Yeah.
So if I'm a new investor, is my best opportunity if I got a really great deal to be a fix and flip and borrow money, or is it something where maybe I should have a little bit of experience first, or do I partner with somebody who's currently doing it? Like, what would you recommend? Because so many people, maybe they're already doing some deals and are thinking, like, hey, I might want to borrow money, or there's some who are like, hey, I've never done a deal. So what kind of advice do you have for somebody for that?
Yeah, I think if you're brand new, for one, like if you're brand new, like finding mentorship is huge. So whether that's with someone like you guys or someone locally, like I'm in James Lascara's group, that's been huge for me. And I wasn't like a newbie going into that, right? But aside from that, like partnering with someone who's more experienced is always a good option. The problem is it's probably going to be a really one-sided partnership. Unless you're bringing all of the money and that person's bringing all the experience, but then maybe you're not learning as much. So like a couple of my borrowers that are newer, like I have the contacts to create a dream team for them. Like, hey, I'm going to make sure this is a good deal. I'll probably know the person who's selling you the deal. So I'm going to give them a hard time and ask the real questions that need to be asked. And I'll look at it. I'll look at the pictures, tell you what I think about your contractor bids, everything.
So you go all in, like you're protecting the people you
I'm like
on the front end and the back end.
Yeah. Like even recently, like some wholesalers that I've worked closely with, I was giving them a really hard time. I was like, hey, look, I know we've done deals together before, et cetera, but my job is two things: make sure the deal gets funded and make sure my borrower is protected. Like, I don't care if that offends you. Like, I don't care if it hassles you. Like, my job is to protect my borrowers at all costs. And in some ways I look at myself as like I'm comping the deals for them, helping them get into it, helping them with negotiation, right? Telling them about the neighborhood. It's like, I'm not an agent, but sometimes I'm like, oh, well, you know, I'm kind of helping them like get teed up for success. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'll say no to 80% of the deals that people send me. I'm like, you don't want to do this. If they lose out on the first deal, real and lasting mutual success is our thing. So if I help you grow your business and it compounds, my business compounds, both from your business and referrals. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm like mama bear with my borrowers. Like, no, you are going to win on this deal. I won't let you lose. So there's that. But then if you find a really good project manager, that's so huge. Like maybe you don't even make money because the project manager is going to be a little bit expensive or it's a thin margin. You will be so much better off getting a project manager who knows the permitting process, who knows where to get materials, who knows the subs to contact. And your project manager is going to be like happy to let you tag along. Like they're effectively your employee for that project.
Well, the best part about it is any money that you do spend for that project manager, whether you're giving them money or you're splitting it, that is huge. You're probably saving all of that and then some from just having the right person on your team.
Yeah.
Because trying to figure this all out on your own is a pain, and not having somebody look over your shoulder and you're just going to try to push through it is going to be an expensive lesson. And either you're going to learn one way or another, either on your own dime or you're going to learn by mistakes. Right. So for me, like we did a deal with Nick and Gabe and you guys where we had a seller who was in Clearwater, wanted to sell his house.
I remember that one.
I ran it by the guys and they were like, hey, we're actually talking to the very same seller.
PPC lead, right?
Yeah. Ours was for Facebook, but it's for you guys, PPC. Yeah. So this guy must have been reaching out to everybody. He was, because he told us we're not the only people we're talking with. But when we made the deal, instead of trying to fight and competition, we got together, made the deal together. And then Nick was helping with it. He had a contractor in the area. So a realtor. So it made the process on our end. I know he had to hustle his tail off for it. So thank you, Nick.
Shout out, Nick.
But the same thing though, instead of having to fight, like collaborate, get somebody in there to help split the profits. But it made the job a lot easier for, hopefully everybody.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's like the little things. Like I didn't hire a project manager for my flip because I was like, I had the time and I wanted to do it. And like, I've managed flips before. I'm not like a total newbie. But it was the stuff of like, okay, what's the best place to get the materials from? Let me go to all of them. That's half your day. Right. It's just like, you literally just don't know because you haven't done it. Even if like our project turned out, like it looked really good at the end and everything, but I had to figure out everything for myself pretty much. My contractor helped some. So thanks, Orlando.
Shout out Orlando.
But he was like, hey, I'm not like a designer, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you have to get it from here and do this and that. And like it's up to you, So yeah, project manager, if you can you can get away with, if you have a really good project manager and a really good hard money lender who sees the deals, gets the deal flow, and can tell you like, hey, this deal crossed my desk. This is a good fit for you. That's my favorite, because if I already believe in the deal, I know which of my borrowers are hungry and what they're looking for. And I'll be like, yo, I got this. This is good. I know the person. I know this neighborhood. I'm putting you into it. Like, wouldn't you love that if you were a new fix and flipper?
Yeah.
So if you have those two things, on your team, I think like you're teed up for success.
Yep.
You could get away with it.
And in the beginning, if you're going to figure out on your own, we did. And it's okay to get punched once in a while, right? Because that's what it feels like. You're trying to run all these places, trying to figure all this out, and it's a lot.
Kicked in the teeth.
Maybe you do that the first time just so you realize the value of having some of those people help you.
So you truly appreciate it.
So you really appreciate it. That's why that deal, like I said, once again with Nick, it was like, I know he worked his tail off because he had to chase some things down, but on our end, boy, it was a lot easier.
But the seller wasn't responding to them, but he was talking to us. So
I remember I think maybe it was something they texted you, like we couldn't get in touch with them. They're like, oh, 27 properties is like yada yada yada. And we're like, we haven't talked to him at all.
No, this one's different. This one
this was a different one.
Yeah, this one Gabe was actually like, we're trying to reach out to this guy. We keep reaching out, but he doesn't answer. It's like, well, he answers our call.
Yeah, but didn't he text you guys and was like, well, 27 properties made me an offer?
No, this was a different one.
It was a different one. Okay.
That was a different one. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, but that's the neat thing about it. Like anytime I have a deal close to you guys, I'm like, hey, is this one in your CRM yet? And Nick will be like, no, not yet. And I'm like, all right, well, what do you think of this deal? Right. He does the same thing here. So it's really about networking too.
Or about collaboration over competition. And I think like that's really important too, because so many people, you know, and have that small minded outlook, but when you can shift to abundance, you know, there's so many people out there that need to be helped. And it's just really important to remember that like there's thousands of people in our CRM that, you know, we are still trying to reach out to daily.
Yeah. And if you can save like half the time or more by working with other people, like the concepts of half a watermelon versus a whole grape, just something I think about all the time.
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, for instance, on that deal I sent over to Nick, I was talking to the guy because he was going to be a borrower and he wanted to fix and flip it. He just ultimately decided wholesaling was going to be easier. He'd been out of the game for a while, right? But I was talking to him and he wanted like me to assign it or like, you know, post on Facebook. And I was like, look, man, I'm going to shoot you straight. The odds of you doing this successfully, like I'm not going to sign your deal for you. I'm not doing that. But the odds of you successfully doing this on your own, I would give you like a 25% chance. You will get eaten alive by people you don't know that this is your first deal, because when they talk to you, they'll see that experience, right? I was like, so, you know, maybe you probably won't assign it for as much. So let's say 25% chance of 30 grand. It's not that good. It's what, like $8,000 expected profit?
Yep.
It's like, okay. Or you can go with Nick in Orlando and you're going to get 50% of it and they're going to be able to assign it for 40 and they're going to be able to do it like that. And you can just sit back and like literally do no work at all. That's exactly what happened. And he was happy as a clam. It was like, I told him the whole half a watermelon versus a full grape. And it's so true. I mean, I did the same on a wholesale deal I signed in Spokane earlier this month. Like I locked it up, didn't have to do any of the dispo stuff. And it was like our buyers, we had 2 buyers fall out and a third buyer like came in. I didn't have to do anything though. So I was like, I'll take my 15K and sit back and work on my lending business. Like it was great for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key. That's why with doing some of the fix and flips, there's a lot of these times where we do them. There's many where I like to wholesale them because of how much time and energy goes into that. So for folks who maybe haven't done a fix and flip, or maybe you have, you've known that process and maybe you don't know yet, but after you close on that property, you still have to now order materials, manage contractors, make sure the contractors are going to not rob you and show up and do the work. And then you've got to make sure the work is quality. It spends a lot of time doing that. So I'm once again, super big on networking and kind of hitting the easy button. Maybe you make a little bit less and there's nothing wrong with that, because that time you spend on that one that you're saving now, you can spend that in other income producing tasks.
Yeah. Your dollar per hour is so much higher. And you guys know, like for people who are real fix and flippers, they have like, I like this neighborhood, this neighborhood, this neighborhood, this neighborhood.
Yeah.
Well, how hard is it to get an off-market deal where you're like, I'm only going to get an off-market deal here? Like it could be anywhere in the county. So it's like, you're just going to close on anything or kill the lead? Like, no, you got to be smart about it. Cherry pick the ones that make sense for you if you want to fix and flip, and then give your buddies that you know an opportunity to fix and flip if they like that area.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you're listening, drop your questions below. We're going to do a live Q&A here. And if you are listening to the replay, drop your questions and we'll be answering them as we see them.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of people watching live right now, and we always get some great questions popping up. So if you do have any questions, once again, drop them down below. We're going to answer those questions. And this is about money lending. And it seems like when you're a real estate investor, we've learned from the beginning, use other people's money. Yeah. And you're going to be able to get into a lot more deals a lot further. Definitely before you start using other people's money, I'm a big thing on education, right? And I think you need to learn how to kind of do these things right. And I think that's really important too. So as far as education goes, if you're going to be borrowing money from a money lender, what are some things to look for, or what are some things to maybe to look out for? Like, oh, don't borrow money from them if they're going to do this.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And what's funny is usually when people are shopping, I have to correct them on the questions they're asking me. I'm like, hey, you're asking the wrong questions. Like, let me tell you what you should be asking when you're looking for a lender. So here's the questions I typically get. What percentage can you fund? What's your points? What's your interest rate? Like, those are fine questions to ask, right? They're not bad. But some questions that people should be asking is, hey, are you the one lending the money? Or are you brokering this to someone else who's lending the money?
Right.
And I'm not here to say that like brokers don't have their place. They're really good for oddball deals. But the problem with a broker is like your odds of getting the deal funded probably get cut in half, because now all of a sudden, like if here I am a lender and I know all my guidelines, 80 pages of what we can and can't fund. Mm-hmm. And then Joe's running around and telling people like some of my terms, but he doesn't really know them that well because he also does this for 50 other lenders. And he brings someone to me and I can't actually talk to them. And he's like, yeah, we can fund this.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, well, you have no idea if you actually can or not.
Well, I've seen that happen before. I've had so many people say, hey, I was going to go buy the deal. And then my funder, people lending me the money backed out at the last minute on the deal. And does that happen often?
Sometimes. I think especially with brokers, like your non-direct lenders, brokers have a reputation for ghosting, for disappearing when things get messy. And it's very, very similar to being a wholesaler, right? Like some wholesalers provide a lot of value, et cetera. But some brokers will like be great and they'll make sure the borrowers are taken care of. I closed the broker deal yesterday. It was awesome. Like had communication with the broker. We were all on the same page. It was great. DJ, if you happen to tune in, awesome working with you. But a lot of times, like once stuff gets started, the connection is between, like if it was wholesale, the end buyer and the seller. In this instance, it's between the borrower and the actual lender. So like if it's a mess, that broker can just disappear and never answer his phone again.
Right.
And he's fine. Everyone else is left with the mess.
Right.
So typically a broker, you're going to get charged extra fees and the odds of your deal going through just not as high. They can be really good for like unique situations, stuff that's out of the box. That's where I think they have their place. Or maybe like new construction, things of that nature. Another really good question is like the Dutch versus non-Dutch. Nobody ever thinks to ask about that. But if you actually went down and broke the numbers down on a deal, that's probably going to be the biggest difference in how much money you're spending. Like someone charging 1.5 points versus 2 points has way less significance than, hey, that $100,000 reno, remember when you were delayed by permits for 4 months and you just had to pay interest on that at 10, 11, 12, 13%?
Yeah, that sounds really bad.
Versus 4 months of not having to pay interest on that? Pretty big difference.
Does that happen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I've got a good buddy of mine. One of his borrowers called me up and was like, yo, I had this like $150K reno with this company and it was held up for 6 months. And
for permits?
Yeah, for permits. And they had to pay the reno budget interest the entire time.
Oh.
I'm like, dude, I would have been like 20 grand cheaper. The other thing that's really important that most people don't ask about is your term length, right? So
we ask about term length all day long.
Yeah. Fair. I want to know. Yes. Oh. And it's a funny question, Nick. Yes, we do require interior access in the state of Florida. The majority of lenders that I've talked to, as well as other wholesalers, are familiar that in the state with the most fraudulent transactions in the country, Most lenders are not going to take a wholesaler's word for granted that, the property's in the condition.
You think Florida is the most fraudulent state?
Yeah, believe it or not.
They say it's a sunny place for shady people.
Well, that's why I came down here.
Nick did tell me that.
Yeah, that's Nick's hitting us with inside jokes right now.
Oh,
but you know what though too?
Funny guy.
Not for nothing though. I also heard that again recently, and they do. That's right.
No, Florida is what I call it, like the wild, wild west down here.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Coming from New York, I don't know. I'm having a ball like dealing with everybody. But.
Yeah, and what's really interesting too is from the lending perspective, like certain states are really, really competitive. Like Texas, if you're not funding 90% or 95% of the cost and like 10% interest, like it's going to be hard for you to do deals there. Like I've heard Colorado is also super, super competitive, but in Florida, like I'm surprised by how bad some of the terms I see, like borderline, like close to usury, and people are like building businesses out of that. And I'm like, dang, man, I'm looking good over here with my terms. Like it's a lot of times I get off the phone with people like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, this is pretty standard in other states. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, on the term being 12-month, like we offer everything 12-month term without extra points. Most lenders are going to like, they'll do all the quotes. They're like, oh, we're 2 points. We're 2 points. And then it's only for 6 months. It's like, if it's your first time, 6 months is kind of a tight window.
Yeah.
So what they don't realize is then they got to pay extension fees, and those extension fees can be expensive.
Gotcha.
$3,000 a pop a lot of times
for each extension.
Yeah.
Well, because what happens is, so you buy it, you close on it, you pull permits. There could be, more time there. Renovations go longer. And then even if that goes okay, putting on the market, there's no way that it might sell immediately. So it might sit on the market for a few months.
Even a year sounds a little nerve-wracking for a new person.
Right.
I mean, ideally, you turn it around quick. I mean, that's what we always say: get in, get out as fast as you can.
Yeah. Time is killer. But yeah, most lenders are going to be at 6. So the other thing too, like you guys mentioned, you used to do BRRRRs. So this is something I came across recently.
Before we knew better, but yeah.
Now I got in trouble because I put on Instagram, BRRRR sucks. And everybody got all mad at me. I'm, whatever.
We put it out like 2 years ago.
It depends what you compare it to, right? If you compare it to creative to lease option, pretty much everything sucks in single family. Like, that's the best strategy there is, in my opinion. But what I found is that some people who are doing BRRRRs, they go with like a bridge lender, is that bridge, like 6 to 12 months. That's what people think of with hard money, is a bridge loan. Well, a lot of these companies don't actually service the notes in-house. They have a third-party company that services it.
Yep.
Well, from the creative space, like some servicers suck. Like they're bad. Well, some of the servicing companies that hard money lenders use are also bad. Like us, we're in-house, which is great because we're right on top of our stuff. But we've had clients that go to us and they're like, hey, I'm burring this. I'm ready to refinance into a 30-year note. Let's get it going. We're like, awesome. One of the steps we need to do is to order your payoff. Well, it's like a 3-week process to get the payoff from the bridge lender. And by the time we get the payoff, like the appraisals are all messed up. Like we have to redraw docs because now we're into the next month. So it's like literally it's impossible. Like you can't do a BRRRR. And it's like they were sold these as, oh yeah, like you can BRRRR out of this. It's a bridge loan.
Right.
But the servicer is so bad that you actually can't.
They make it almost impossible.
Yeah.
Why would they not want to help?
They collect the money. They keep collecting fees. You keep paying interest on the money you borrow because you didn't cash them out yet. And every month that you have that money out to them, and I would imagine if you're a money lender, they might know to use that servicing company so they don't get paid back as quick. Who knows? Just,
Right. And what's crazy too is a lot of times they charge them money to request the payoff and then take 3 weeks to get it.
Yep.
It's like for us, we just know that because it's all like in-house. So we're like, yeah, we know what the payoff is. It's right here.
Yeah.
There's no order it from external party. It's like,
oh, it's all BS anyways. You can get a payoff. You should be able to get it within hours.
In the modern era, you would think that
right?
They would know exactly how much.
No, it's on purpose. That's just my 2 cents. But I mean, it shouldn't take weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So money lending obviously is important. You got to look for the pros and cons, right? You got to figure out if that's the right step for you. So if somebody's going to do it, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, just a phone call, honestly.
You want to put your phone number on there?
Yeah, it's 906
362-1801,
1801, and it's on Do Not Disturb. And I'm really busy today. So if I don't get back to you today or tomorrow, that would be why.
Well, you can call or text Jared.
Yeah, prank calls only, please.
And he doesn't mind being called like super late at night, guys. So if you've got a money lending question at like midnight and you're up all night worried about it.
Like, yeah, if you need it funded by 6 a.m. and it's 4 a.m., just please give me a call. Call multiple times so like the Do Not Disturb thing breaks. That would be great. But actually one thing that we should talk about is this whole Gator situation. Yeah. So
I don't know. We only have like 15 minutes left. That's like in its own episode.
Well, specifically with hard money.
Okay.
So like, Gator.
We got to talk about what is Gator.
Yeah.
Like somebody might be like the Gators living down next to.
Because we're in Florida, so they think Gators are like
we're constantly looking for the Gators, but that is not what we're talking about.
True.
There's Gator lending. So just explain.
Yeah. That so originally, as I understand it, Pace Morby starts putting out Gator method. Gator lending is like, hey, broke wholesalers who literally can't put up the $500, $1,000, $5,000 of earnest money deposit, which is money that you need to send into title to legally bind your contract to show like, I've actually got money on the line here. If you had a good deal, but you didn't have money for EMD, typically you have like a 3-day window to submit it. You could go to someone who's going to lend you that money short-term, crazy expensive. Crazy expensive.
What's crazy expensive?
Like if you annualize the return,
big words there. Break it down.
So meaning if you took how much money you're making.
I borrow $500 from you, and you're a Gator lender, and it takes me 5 months to be able to find my buyer and get the deal done. And I had to borrow $500 from you. What's that going to cost me? If you're a shark Gator.
Probably like $10,000.
Seriously?
Oh, for real. Like you can, I know people that'll take a third of the assignment fee for putting up the earnest money.
Okay.
Come get it, boy.
And a lot of times you're getting this money. If the deal works out the way it should, you'll get the money back in 1 to 2 weeks.
Keywords being if it.
Yeah. If it doesn't, like you're probably going to lose everything, but you get the relationship with the title company. If the deal falls out, you might be able to pick up the deal, etc. Right? So that's how it kind of started. But now Gator lending has just honestly become like shark lending in the context of hard money lending. So you had mentioned, Joe. Yeah, I remember that was when I came down. I remember when Nick made the $5,000 on lending the earnest.
So
money.
he lent somebody $500, and he made $5,000, which is a very great return. I mean, that's a big one in only 3 weeks.
While he was on vacation in Spain, if I remember correctly.
Well, he had to pay for the.
He's like, my trip is free.
Mr. Worldwide. I love it.
Yeah. So what we're seeing a lot now is people are like, oh, OPM. I'm gonna flip with $0 out of pocket.
Right.
And what a lot of new people don't realize is like, for one, if you get hard money, you still have to fund the renovation. So even if you have enough money to close, but you have to actually pay for the reno, wait for some of it to be done, and then request that you get some funds back. Just like that's standard, any construction loan in any industry typically works like that. Well, here's the thing. Like people are like, well, I want to get into it. I don't have the money. What if Jared will give me 85% of the money that I need? What if I find someone else and get a loan with them and don't tell Jared about it for the rest of the money? And then they probably still don't have the money to actually do the reno. So people will do that. And the problem comes up is like a lot of people will lose their earnest money on a deal, or the deal will fall apart because when you get to like closing, it's like, hey, someone's trying to record the second lien. And we're like, whoa. Someone's trying to do what now? And you call up the borrower and you're like, yo, dude, I thought this was your money. It's like, well, no, somebody else is borrowing. Like you have no money. Like I told you, we can't do the deal if you have no money. So that's what
I've seen some people do. They call it a 70-20-10 split.
Oh, I'm not familiar.
Oh yeah, these people are so darn creative with so far levels of borrowing other people's money. They'll borrow 70% of the deal from you. So that's the cost of the project to buy the house, cost of the renovations. They'll borrow the other 20% from another borrower just to have extra money in their pocket. And they borrow the final 10% too. So they legitimately have zero money into it. They got full money out on the deal. And then if they don't sell that deal, I've seen them lose quite a bit of checks a number of times. I'm not going to say who, but they are somebody you probably already follow on Instagram. Not any of these people we've been talking about. There's some really creative stuff to do, but you got to be careful of over leveraging your deals, borrowing too much money on that deal and not be able to pay it all back. So what would you say for some situations like that? Because I'll give you an example. We have a lead in our CRM. Seller reaches out to us. They want to sell this property. They bought it for $600,000. They put $150,000 into it. So they borrowed something from their money lender. They're paying, I think they said it was like $6,000-$7,000 a month in interest payments. Yeah, interest only. Borrow that money. They put it on the market at 1.2, doesn't sell. 1.1 doesn't sell. $1 million doesn't sell. They had it when we chatted with them at 950, still wasn't selling. They were going to drop it to 899, and they say anything less than that, we're going to be losing money. And I checked on it, and it was an 899, and it didn't sell. I don't know. I didn't follow up with it after that because these people are going to be in a world of trouble. What they did was they way outdid the neighborhood for what that house was. And it was a bigger house, needed a ton of work. They did a gorgeous job.
It's the biggest house in the neighborhood.
It is.
Not a good thing, man.
Yeah. And they really outdid themselves. I mean, it made it look stunning. However, now they're into that project for $750, actual borrowed money, but yeah, they're paying $7,000 a month. And they can't even afford those interest only payments anymore. They're like, we don't know what to do. We thought it was going to get sold right away. So, not over leveraging yourself is also key because the market goes up and down, guys. And when it was a seller's market 2 years ago, if your project went over, took a little bit longer, there were some situations where the house was even worth more. So it actually wasn't a terrible thing. It might have cost you a little bit more in fees, but the house got more because like in South Florida, the market was going straight up. It was out of control. Yes. But then on the flip side, if the market is stagnant or if it's slightly going down a little bit, that extra time is just costing you money. And that could be the difference of it being a great deal or a bad deal quick.
That's kind of where we're at right now too. Days on market has gone up so much, which refers to how long it takes for you to sell a house once you list it. I mean, that's just like, it was pretty much in the teens. And then like 2 months ago in Tampa Bay, it got above 30 and it stayed there. I know people who are really good flippers who are calling me and like, hey, can I refinance this into a rental? Like, I can't find somebody to buy this. These are people that have like been on HGTV. Like they're gorgeous houses.
So what's the average? This is in Tampa. Every market's a little bit different, but what do you know what the average turnaround time in Tampa is now, days on market?
When I checked for last month, and that, by the way, if anyone wants like insights into the Tampa market, want to know history of neighborhoods, everything like that, I have a newsletter.
He does it.
So you can just drop your email or text me and I can get you on that. You also get invites to the meetup that I run with Nick, and you guys are actually going to be on the panel.
We're on a panel. So fancy.
Yeah, pretty fancy. But anyhow, last time I checked, it was like 32 days. 32. And so that's like average. So you got to be thinking like there's some properties that are out there 60, 90 days pulling up that average.
Yeah, because out here it's what?
In Bradenton right now?
Sarasota, Bradenton.
Oh, it's even worse.
Yeah.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. And it keeps on growing.
I just keep getting price drop emails from Zillow because I like to watch things too. And just every week.
Yeah. So the ones that I've noticed that seem to do the best, from my opinion, if you're going to do a fix and flip, some strategies that I would always recommend, if the market's going up or if it's going down, if I'm going to go in Tampa or back to old Rochester, New York, where Jenn and I were from.
You're going back?
I'm not going back. But I'm just
theoretically, if one were to
if you were doing a deal there, you won't see me there. But
well, it is one of the top, hottest markets for a $100,000 house in the city of Rochester.
Oh yeah, it's one of the hottest markets in the whole country right now. But the thing is, what I always say is, if you're going to do it, whatever the median house price range is If I'm slightly under that and I'm sticking into areas that have great school districts, those still usually can move pretty quickly. So if I'm in Tampa, and what's my average price in Tampa?
Yeah, it's like high 300s right now.
Okay, so say high 300s. So if any property that I'm looking at, instead of it being 390, I get into a project where it's done, it's on the market, it's beautiful, it's 325, it's in a good school district, like that's going to get some action still, right?
Yeah, mine was at 329 in St. Pete.
How'd you do on that?
Well, I mean, even at that price point, and like, look, it was my first project. It looked good. It wasn't like amazing. We had 100 saves on Zillow in 10 days, 1,000 views, 1 FHA offer.
Wow.
Yeah.
When did it go live?
This was over a month ago.
So this year. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I tell people right now, like, yeah, you want to be either in that spot or to the point where people are buying cash, like the $1 million plus or below median, because I don't know if this is true, but one of the guys I was talking to is like, yeah, I was pricing something at like that mid to high 600s. And I found out for someone to qualify for a mortgage, you pretty much have to be a 1% earner.
Right.
So I get really nervous when people are like, hey, I want something at like that 550 mark. Like, I'm like, I know it's a really good area, but who's going to buy it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're asking someone to buy it cash essentially.
Yeah. And that's what I found interesting. Manatee County, where we live, it's 70% of deals are cash, they say.
Wow.
70%.
Just from like older folks that can buy cash.
I imagine all of them Northerners moving down here, buying all these Florida houses.
Well, what you can get here from, New York City. I mean,
yeah, if you live in Boston or you live in New York City and you have your 800 square foot place and that's worth 2.3 million. And then you come down here and you look at what $1.5 million gets you, and you're in a 3,500 square foot house with a pool and all these things. It's wonderful. So that really works out well. So I know we have a few minutes left. Questions. So do we have any questions we want to drop in there?
Anything? No? Oh, we already answered them? Okay.
If we answered them, that's great. That means we did our job. I saw we had a couple long ones. I didn't know if there's anything good in there or if they're just people saying hi because they're excited to have you here.
Oh, okay. Edgar, that's exactly the same situation I am in. Only have 20% down payment, but don't have the reno money. Hard money lender said I have to use the money to start the reno. Then once a portion is done, I can request the money back and use it for the next portion, rinse and repeat. Yeah. So
Edgar, for that, there's a couple of recommendations I have. One, the business line of credit is just absolutely such a good product, or HELOC. Those are, like, in my opinion, the two best sources to fund your reno, to at least front fund it. Or if you have really good credit limits on credit cards, like 0% interest intro type of stuff is really effective. And then back to like the over leveraging, working with gators, like I want to make it clear that some people do it and they do it right. Like for us personally, we're fine with it if people are at least putting 5% of their own money in. But with these gators, like or private money or family money, ideally you don't want to have it secured by the property. You want it to be kind of just like, hey, this is funds just generally for your business purpose. If you apply it to the real estate, that's great. But those can be really good options, like, your uncle who's retired and wants to make some passive income or is willing to do a profit split or come on the LLC with you. That's something that's super effective to help you break into the first one. And it's super important on your first one that you win, because you ideally want to get enough proceeds out of it that you don't have to bring on your partner for the second one.
You want to hear a fun, quick story?
Yes.
Jen and I, our very first burr. Now, don't get me wrong. This was 2008. So some of you might have been still high school or middle school or younger.
I was 10.
There you go. So, but in 2008, we found a house in New York. The market was crashing. We were finding deals online. We found a house that we bought for $47,000 cash. And we had the money for the renovations. But what I did was I went to 3 different credit unions all in the same day.
You're not recommending to do it.
Don't do it this way. But what I did was I took out personal loans. There was no closing costs or borrow the money. It was just me signing it. Wow. I took out 3 on the same day because a credit hack I know. I was in the car business. I ran people's credit. And if I take out a loan, it takes 30 days before it can hit your credit report to show you have it. So I went all on the same day. Jeez. Borrowed 25 grand from one. I borrowed 15,000 from the other. And I borrowed the 7,000 from the last one. And before you know it, I went to closing. Here's my 3 checks. I gave him like a couple of grand in closing costs. We funded the renovation. And the trick was those loans were for like, one was for 3 years. The other two were for 5 years. So our payment was kind of high. So the first few years we were renting, we really weren't making much money on it, but that's how we even got into it in the beginning.
Did Nick have a mustache question?
Did he?
Mustache question.
Gabe.
Oh, Gabe.
Yeah, that is a great question, Gabe. So here's the thing, like it's not required to apply, but if you want to get the best rates and terms, we will measure the distance of your mustache. And every extra centimeter, you get 1% off.
There you
go. You know, I'm waiting for that guy that I can quote out at like 5% interest. And I don't know, Gabe.
What if you're a lady and you just can't grow one?
Well, you know, that's bring that up with the HR department.
Okay. Yeah. No, but yeah, good to see you, Gabe. Good friend of ours.
So yeah, do you want to tell us real quick when the next Tampa meetup is? And I know it's coming up in
June. Yeah, June 13th. So Crest Community in Wellswood, which is like 10 minutes north of downtown Tampa. Super excited to have you guys talking pretty much your strategy with creative finances from acquisition to dispo. I know Nick's going to be joining us. Dante's going to be joining us.
Wow.
And so we're going to have a local attorney, Derek, join us as well. So it's pretty awesome. I'm super excited for it. The mustache will be on full display.
Woo-hoo.
It's not going anywhere.
You know, it's serious now.
Well, thank you for coming to our house. I really love this in-person podcast. I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, this was the first one we got to do this way, and I actually want to get like all the setup now.
I'm like, we need a studio.
Well, and then you can fly people in, and like the entry line, they can be like, oh, you know, the flight wasn't bad, and then you'll feel like you're really a legit show.
Hey, you know,
it was really cool because I feel like the energy is just obviously a lot different, and you're not like stumbling over, you know, the Zoom cutting in and out.
Yeah, 100%.
No, much better. So awesome. Well, thank you for coming over, bud. We really appreciate it. And as usual, guys, if you want to find out more, you definitely know how to reach out. Please do that. And if you're in Florida, we're hosting our meetup every single month in Bradenton. So make sure if you're ever in even North America and you still want to come to Florida, what better place to be, right? Beaches, sunshine, palm trees, we're here. But also our podcast, creativefinanceplaybook.com. Same names of YouTube channel, Creative Finance Playbook. And if you're already not part of our community, make sure you join our Facebook group, Creative Finance Playbook with Jen and Joe, because we're sharing deals in there. Our clients are sharing deals. We've got people lending money in there, and it's just a great community to network. And then obviously, if this is something that you're doing and you're rocking, we love to connect too. So my cell phone number is also out there. You could always call or text 585-207-2240. And every Tuesday at 2:00, come join us live. And if you've got any questions, get to meet awesome people. We get to hang out and talk real estate. So have a wonderful Tuesday. And tonight we'll be hanging out at our meetup. So can't wait for that here because tonight is the night. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. And we will see you soon.
We'll see you next Tuesday, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.